If you want to be a great writer, the very first thing you need to do is to become a great reader. So what do I mean becoming a great reader? Well, in order to read like a writer, I think it's very important to read with a critical eye, to develop a really keen instinct for what you do like and don't like, and working out a way to create a practice where you read consistently so it can inform your work even when you're not directly writing. All of these things are what we're going to be covering in this video today. So hello, my name is Christy. I'm an author. My debut novel comes out in July this year. I'm so excited, but in addition to that, I've also published Memoir. I've done a lot of travel writing, I've done a lot like fiction, I've done a whole bunch of stuff, and I get asked by a lot of you guys, what is your advice for someone who's just starting out with writing? And I'm so flattered whenever I get asked this question and I get smacked with imposter syndrome, and also B, my advice is always the same thing, which is to read as much as you can. But I don't think it's just about reading lots and lots and lots. And in this video, I wanted to share with you all of the things I think a beginner should do, or really anyone should do, any emerging writer, anyone who just wants to improve their eye for reading or who wants to improve their writing through the act of reading. Here are all of my tips for you. Number one, what books and sources to choose. So before you even sit down and start reading, you need to think about the things that you're going to be reading and also the things you're not going to be reading for the sake of bettering your craft. Not every story needs to in some way better your ability to be a writer or a storyteller. There are some books I specifically pick up for research. There are some books I specifically pick up because they're in a similar voice or a similar time period to a story I want to work on. And there are books that I pick up without any intention of a single critical thought entering my brain. Now, I'm not physically capable of stopping those critical analytical thoughts, but there are things that I pick up where I just want to have fun and I just want to read it, and I'm not going to review it for a YouTube video, and I'm not going to use it as a research piece. And I think it's so important to make space for enjoying stories and enjoying reading just because you enjoy it, because you still get something out of that process. Everything you read, every piece of art you come across, music, television, is in some way going to add to that creative compost heap of stuff that ends up coming out in your imagination when you sit down to write a story. Now, what I would say is when you're picking up works that you want to analyze, that you want to learn from, pick a small number. Don't pick 20. I think you get so much more out of reading one piece of work really, really deeply and slowly, reading it a couple of times or even more, than reading a whole bunch of stories really, really, really quickly and not really taking in the information. I also think it's important that you don't limit yourself to what particular sources you're analyzing. It doesn't have to be a book in order to be a worthy story. It can be a video game arc. It can be a TV show. It can be a script. It can be literally anything, as long as it has a story that you can analyze and as long as you have an opinion on it. Oh, I almost forgot. Get a library card, please. I'm begging you. I will beg everyone until the end of time. Go get a library card. Libraries are some of the few remaining truly abundant places on earth. It doesn't matter how much money you have. It doesn't matter what your budget is. You get a library card and you go to the library and you just pick out whatever you want. Like if you truly don't know what you want to read, go grab a bunch of books that look interesting, read the first chapters, and if you don't like them, you can return them. It's totally fine. Also, it supports authors. Authors do earn money from libraries. Get a library card, support your local libraries. I will recommend that in every video. And as a person who does spend a lot of time at the library using public Wi-Fi networks, working out in public at cafes, I found it incredibly important to have a good VPN, which brings us to the sponsor of this video, Surfshark. Surfshark is a VPN or virtual private network that helps to keep you and your devices protected. Online security and privacy is especially important when you're working a lot outside of the house. And Wi-Fi networks are one of the easiest places where personal information can be intercepted. So Surfshark helps to protect your connection by encrypting your data and keeping everything private. Surfshark also has over 4,500 servers in over 100 countries, which means that if you're traveling and you want to access a movie which is available in your home country, or if you're at home and you want to access something from somewhere else, you can just switch on Surfshark and change your virtual location. Surfshark also has unlimited devices per account, so I can use it across my tablet, my phone, my computer, all of my devices. And Surfshark also comes with Surfshark Antivirus, which offers 24/7 malware protection and webcam protection as well. Surfshark is super easy to use. It comes with a 30-day money-back guarantee, and it's a wonderful tool for readers, writers, and anyone who wants to keep their devices safe. Go to surfshark.com/ChristyN Jones or use the code Christy Jones to get 4 extra months of Surfshark VPN. So you've got your book, your script, your video game, your stack of things from the library. How do you sit down and start reading and analyzing these sources? I'm gonna sound a bit like a broken record here, but this is basically just what I do and how I learned to do this. I chase the thing I find interesting. I chase the thing I find fun. So when I'm annotating a book, let me find one. This is several short sentences about writing. I got this book rec from my literary agent because I was talking about craft books and she recommended this, and I have annotated some of this. You don't even need the fancy little cute looking plastic tabs. These are just ripped up sticky notes. I have underlined just the things I thought were cool and interesting, and that's really helped me to dwell on those sentences, to really take in that information. If I annotate it and pop a sticky note on it, it's really easy for me to find it a few years later or whenever I want to return to that thing in that book. However, if it's a research book, or if it was a book I was specifically reading for the purpose of analyzing its voice and structure, which I haven't done for many years, but when I used to do this, I would pull open a Word doc and I would retype things out. I would type the full sentence I found interesting. I would write down everything. I would take that time to slow down and actually write down everything I liked and everything I found interesting. And you can do this with any book or piece of media. If there's a bit of dialogue you find interesting, if there's a whole paragraph of a book, open up a Word doc and just slowly type it out. I gave this advice one time in a video and I mustn't have explained it very well because someone was like, do I rewrite the whole book? And I was like, no, please don't do that. I'm not telling you to do that. But I think it can be really helpful if you're early on in your journey, if you're an emerging writer, if you want to understand the construction of a sentence that's very different to the kind of sentence you would write. Sitting down and rewriting it can help your brain figure out exactly how everything works. I think it can be really helpful to pick 2 very disparate styles of writing and to compare them. If you don't know what books to pick, if you have no idea, I do recommend watching this personal curriculum video that I made because I just gave you guys a list of books to read if you want to be a writer. But one of the examples I had was Angela Carter versus Ernest Hemingway. So Carter's writing is very beautiful and decadent and purple and descriptive, all in the best kind of way, whereas Ernest Hemingway is very careful, to the point, not a lot of flowery description. They're 2 very different voices. So if you're just starting out and you're trying to figure out what is the difference between this voice and that voice, it can help to pick a few different sentences of writers you like and then write out exactly the sentence. Now say you want to do this not for voice but for something bigger like structure. What I would do is sit down with a favorite book, a book I know very well, say for example, The Picture of Dorian Gray. I would read a full chapter and I would summarize it in my own words. Now the point of doing this exercise, having summaries of each chapter, critically analyzing the structure of the book, the point of doing this is not to have a summary of the work. The point of doing this is the fact that you sat down and you analyzed everything yourself and you helped develop that skill in your brain. So for this one, I'm not recommending you go and Google a summary and just read it. I'm recommending you take the time to actually analyze it yourself and put it into your own words, because doing that is going to really help you discern where the story beats are, where the tension starts building, where the foreshadowing is. When you're reading a book, if the book is written well, there are so many things going on that you as the reader don't really necessarily understand until you start delving deeper into the story and you think, okay, well that was a red herring for this and that was the foreshadowing for that, and that's where this symbol gets introduced. Writing a little summary of each chapter or each part or the first half of the story in your own words is really helpful. Again, you can do this with the blurb of the story, or for example, you can write a 1-pager on the full synopsis of your favorite book if you want to understand what a really good narrative structure feels like. This happens, the character gets called to action, this happens there, midpoint twist, all hope is gone, end of the story, and this is the arc and this is what we learned and all of that stuff. Once you've done that enough times, you'll start to really innately understand the structure of a story. And again, do it with the books that you like. So in terms of critically analyzing the things you've underlined and the things that you've written, I've already started touching on this point, like I just jumped ahead in this video, oops. Basically, if there are things you don't know yet about craft, like symbolism or metaphor I would suggest picking up a few craft books. There are YouTube videos that can be really helpful. Again, in that personal curriculum video, I gave a bunch of recommendations for craft books that I think are really, really helpful. For poetics and narratology, things like figurative language, I have previously made a video where I speak about these things, but the main thing that I used to do in university, in my first intro to English classes, is that the tutor would put on the board symbolism, metaphor, look up a laundry list of these techniques, and then they would photocopy a page of Frankenstein by Mary Shelley or some kind of classic, or literally any piece of writing with a highlighter, and you go through and you go, okay, that's a symbol, that's a symbol, that's a simile, I think that's a bit of foreshadowing, and you go through and you pick out all of those techniques in the author's work. Now here is the really, really important part of doing a close reading. You need to know why the author did that thing. It's all well and good to be like, okay, that's a metaphor, but what does the metaphor do? What does that tell you about the character? What does the symbol make you feel? What does that language do to the rest of the story? And what does that dialogue reveal in that character? If you want to read like a writer, I think one of the most important things you can learn how to do is to constantly be asking yourself, why is the author doing it that way? What effect does that have on me? Does it make me laugh? Does it make me feel sad? What is this implying? Is this increasing tension? Is it decreasing tension? Why are we doing these things? And that why is a really, really essential part of learning how to read really well, and learning how to analyze the why in a lot of things is going to really, really help you in your writing. So how do you develop a reading practice that benefits your craft even when you're not writing? The most important thing I think in developing any new habit is finding a way to make it easier on yourself. We're all living very, very busy lives. The vast majority of people who are watching these videos are people who work full-time, they're students, they're parents, all of us, we have things going on. We don't need things to be, I've said things a lot, we don't need things to be more difficult, basically. So I would say if you want to develop a reading practice, go easy on yourself, try and make it as fun and interesting as possible, and also try to reduce any kind of resistance that you can. So for example, I always have a book downloaded on my phone. My phone is always with me. It makes it really, really easy for me to pick up my phone and start reading. Do I always do that? No, not necessarily. I go through my emails and then I end up on social media. But the point is, when I do have a particularly long trip on the train or the bus or whatever, I can pull out my phone and easily read my book. I also always have an audiobook going, and I always have a physical book going at home. I always have at least 3 books going at any one time, so no matter where I am or what I'm doing, it's easy for me to pick up my book. Also, if I want to bring a physical book with me, I very carefully choose a book which is smaller so I don't feel inconvenienced by putting it in my bag. I don't want to put the full Lord of the Rings into my backpack. A, it would damage it and that would break my heart, and B, it's just way too heavy. And the other point of this is, if you want to read consistently, try and find little bits of your day where it's fairly easy to slot that in. Is that 20 minutes on your lunch break? Is it the 20 minutes before you make dinner? Is it 20 minutes after your kids go to bed? Is there a particular time where you find yourself not really doing anything, not necessarily resting, where you could instead be doing some reading? And again, it doesn't necessarily have to be a book. If you're the kind of person who watch a TV show every single night, that could be the thing you're analyzing. This point is a bit easier with older films and older TV shows, but you can go and Google scripts for TV shows. So say you're watching an episode, go and look up the script after you finish watching it, see if you can reread it a little bit, do some analysis, or once you've finished watching the TV show, get out your notebook and just write down a summary of what happened in that episode. What were the narrative beats? What did I like? What didn't I like? What dialogue do I remember? What do I remember making me feel excited or repulsed? Or what specific part of the storytelling really, really resonated with me? Again, just developing that critical eye for this was good, this wasn't good for me, blah, 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 is going to really, really, really help you. Fundamentally, if you want to develop a reading practice, start small. Don't put too much pressure on yourself, make it easy for yourself, reduce resistance, and try and find little bits and pieces where you can get to reading. This is my same advice for if you want to develop a writing routine. Maybe your sacred time for reading is an hour on a Saturday. That's fine. The point is that you're getting better. The point is that you're developing your critical eye, that you're learning how to ask yourself that why question again. Why did the writer do this thing? And what effect did it have on me? And now moving on to how you implement this into your own own writing. The reason why all of this is so important, learning how to critically analyze things, learning how to ask that why question, is because once you finish writing like a chapter or a book, you are going to have to be the person who reads it and analyzes it. And this is another question I get asked a lot. If you're an aspiring author, should you hire an editor? Should you pay someone to edit your work before you go off and try get a literary agent? And my answer to that is definitively no. I think you should learn how to edit the work yourself, because your editor is not going to is not going to do the work for you. They are not going to handhold you. I've now gone through the process of spending 10 months editing my novel with my literary agent, and then going through the process of spending the past year less than a year, maybe another 6 to 10 months. I don't know. The whole past year is a blur. I've worked really, really hard on Theodora's Teashop, but spending the last many, many months working with the publisher to edit my novel, most of that editing, 90% of that editing was driven by me. So my editor would come in and suggest this, this, and this, and then I would go away and be like, all right, we'll do this, we won't do that. I'll try and find a different way to solve this, and then I'll spot 10 different other things, and then I'll go away and edit that. So for emerging writers, I think it's really, really important to develop this eye for storytelling, to develop this practice for reading, to ask yourself, why is the author doing that? Do I like it? What do I like about it specifically? How is that interesting? Developing that creative, critical thinking, because you need to bring that back to your own stories, and that's how you improve. I'm a really, really big advocate for the first draft of anything is supposed to be I tell myself this, I say just get the words on the page, and then once the words are on the page, it's never as bad as I thought it was while I was writing it. You can work from words on a full page. You can say, okay, what works? What doesn't work? What do I like? What don't I like? And from that point, you can improve it. And with every draft, if you improve your story by 30% in 3 drafts, your book's going to be a lot better, 90% better, in fact. And finally, it's really, really important after you've done all this work, you've done all this analysis, and you've rewritten things in your own words, and you've analyzed and you've done everything, not to copy the authors that you love. It is so common for early writers to come in and to kind of write a pastiche of their favorite writer, or to kind of imitate for people to imitate their favorite authors when they start writing. This happens to many, many, many people. The first big story I wrote was when I was 7. It was a full rip-off of the first Lemony Snicket book, like 100%. It was like a 13-page scroll of The Bare Beginning. But if you find yourself copying your favorite authors, basically what I would suggest is to keep writing until you get past that, because we don't need an imitation of this writer or that writer. We need you to develop the unique voice that you have. We need you to write the stories that only you can write. And that brings me to the end of this video. I hope you liked it. I hope you found it helpful. If you want to pre-order Theodora's Teashop, there are links in the description down below. It comes out in July. I'm losing my mind. I cannot believe how soon that book is coming out. I'm so excited. The cover is being announced really, really, really soon. Not yet, but very, very soon. Before I go, I just wanted to say a massive thank you to everyone over on Patreon, because without Patreon, I wouldn't be able to make these videos. Over there, we have a bunch of bonus content, our book club, our Discord server. I've started posting voice notes over there. We have bespoke videos, we have writing updates. There are so many things. So please feel free to go ahead and check out Patreon. There is a link in the description down below. Take care, everyone, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.